Hello, my name is David Duffy. I'm a retired physician and I want to share some thoughts about healing. Today, we're going to talk about bacterial infections. One of the germs that causes many infections is called Staphylococcus aureus. Staph is a cluster, aureus means gold. These are germs that are all around. They're on your skin, they're in your nose. Under the microscope, when stained, they appear blue. In a colony, when you grow them on a plate, the group of germs growing is yellow. So that's how it got its name, Staphylococcus aureus. Even though they're around, from time to time, they cause infections that can be unpleasant. One of them is called a boil or a carbuncle. The germ is on your skin. Let's say a person with diabetes kind of gets scratched or has a puncture wound or something, and there's an opening. And the germs there get in and cause an infection. Such a germ is called a pathogen, a germ that causes disease. Well, what happens when that occurs? The germ has entered into the skin and it starts to grow. And the symptoms include redness, tenderness, swelling, and that can be on the leg, the back, the neck, whatever. And what's going on is that your immune system is responding to the growth of that germ. The first one to respond is an antibody called immunoglobulin M. And it's a network of 5 antibodies linked together, and they have the capacity to catch and attach themselves to those germs from the very beginning. Sometimes we think of the immune system as the policeman, like the SWAT team that will go in and get them, but that's really not the case. In this boil, what has happened is that the IgM antibodies kind of form a ring around the infection and hold them in place. It kind of focuses it and like police cording off an area. Now, when those germs are captured by the IgM, some of them are eaten by macrophages, the digestive kind of cells. They're taken back to the immune headquarters, and antibodies specifically against that germ are created. And those are called IgG, immunoglobulin G. It takes a few days for that to occur. In the meantime, the germs are growing and are consuming the waste. They're feeding upon the sugar and whatever it is that makes them grow. In addition to those 2 antibodies and the cells that make them, we have proteins in the blood called complement. The complement system is a group of over 30 proteins made by the liver, and they have very interesting functions, okay? So the the infection starts, the antibodies gather them up, contain them, and the first set of complements have three functions. They're going to trigger, they're going to land on the germ. The IgG is going to land on the germ, and that is going to have a link on the complement that tells macrophages to come and get them. So they set up a target for the macrophages to consume them. The second feature of that is to call for more help, to trigger inflammation, just like a policeman would call for backup, and so that the white blood cells come, and the blood vessels open up so that fluid pours out, and you get the swelling as part of the inflammation. Now, the third part is fascinating, okay? The series of complement proteins attach themselves to the germ surface, and they basically drill a hole and create a pore in the cell, which will allow fluid to go into the cell and explode it. That's the killing mechanism that the antibodies and complement have in dealing with the germs. So over time, we have the germs come in, they're contained, the germs grow, but ultimately in this area, the germs are killed, and there's a digestive process, and the surface of the boil becomes thin and breaks open, and just like a volcano, the pus can come out. Okay? Another germ that's common is the streptococcal germ, Streptococcal pyogenes. And that is known to cause skin infections as well as throat infections. You've heard of a strep throat. In that case, the body has some waste in the throat. Perhaps you start off with a virus infection of the throat, and then the strep germs are around, and it catches. Now, in modern times, the doctor will prescribe antibiotics for a bacterial infection. Staph aureus has an enzyme that breaks down penicillin. So penicillin itself doesn't work. But another antibiotic that's like penicillin but has a resistance to that is called nafcillin. And then there are others like Keflex. And so when you have that infection, you take the antibiotic for a week or 10 days, and the antibiotic kills the germs. Wow, that sounds good, yeah. If it's strep throat or a strep skin infection, penicillin and ampicillin are antibiotics that work for that also. Okay, now, so in modern medicine, the treatment of choice is the antibiotic that kills the germ that's causing the infection. And that's why they go to the doctor and they take the pus and they put it in the little tube and send it to the lab to do the bacteriology. They're going to take and culture and find out what germ growing on, identify it, what the resistant antibiotics are, and let the doctor know. Now, that sounds good, but there is a problem. When you have waste building up in the skin or the throat, and you cut short the growth of the germs, you're going to stop them from growing. What happens to the waste? It may just stay there. So you take your antibiotics, you're much better, and then what happens? A month later, a couple of weeks later, boom, it comes again. And sometimes the same antibiotic will work. Sometimes the new germ is resistant to the antibiotic, and you have a cycle of repeated antibiotics. Now, what's missing here is cleaning out the body from the germs that feed, from the food that feeds the germs. Okay. Now let's think about this. Let's pretend there's a man who's overweight, he has diabetes, and he's very sedentary. He may have difficulty breathing, he's out of shape, he's morbidly obese, he doesn't move around, he's being cared for by a nurse or an attendant or a family member. And so he sits here watching TV and enjoying himself, and he loves to eat. So he eats and eats and eats. He takes his insulin, he takes all his medicine, but oh my goodness, he still keeps getting infections. And the last time he had an infection, he had to go to the hospital. He had a fever. The infection had spread into his blood, and he had a week or so of antibiotics intravenously. Oh my goodness, we saved his life, and he had very powerful antibiotics, and it was very expensive in the hospital. Okay, you are a concerned family member or concerned friend. How can we help this man not keep getting infections? Well, it's obvious that we should change his diet so that he loses weight and has control of his diabetes. B, if he is so weak and frail, we need to give him physical therapy so that he can start moving around and being functional. We need to work on hygiene. If you sit around and sweat and you don't take a bath, things like that. Now, often this kind of patient is stubborn. They like to eat. They don't know, they want their ice cream and things like this. So that there is a tension going on between what he should do and what he will do. And depending on his cooperation and the people who are caring for him, it may be a matter of letting him do his thing because he puts up an argument and won't cooperate. And then he keeps getting antibiotics, and finally he could die of a stroke, whatever. On the other hand, is it possible to really get him better? And the answer is yes, but it's not always done. I had an elderly lady. I took care of her at home, and she was about 90 years old. She had diabetes. She had gone into the hospital with, I think, a leg infection, and she also had to have a feeding tube. So surgically, the tube was placed in her stomach. So at home, she's on bed. She's put up in a chair. They have to use like a lift, a Hoyer lift, kind of shift her to move because she literally doesn't much do things herself. She's a bit senile. They have huge amounts of cans of this Ensure or whatever the feeding liquid is. And her blood sugar is still high, and she doesn't do much of anything. In this case, we had a wonderful daughter who was quite cooperative. And so instead of pouring on this canned food, she began to take fruits and vegetables and proteins and stuff and puree them through the feeding tube. And as we started giving her food that was good for her and didn't have excess sugar, her sugar came down, her insulin requirements went down, and she became more alert. And eventually, she was in control of diabetes without insulin. She was on fresh foods. She became more cooperative. She began to talk, and she had a period of life that was much better. And eventually she died, but that was a very hopeful thing. Now, my interest is preventing these things. Once you have the first infection, let's learn from that. Let's get to the bottom of it and do some changes to make it better. Hopefully prevent an infection, or at least make progress. How do we do that? To my way of thinking, it can only come from educating the patient so they understand what's going on and they're invited to do something about it themselves. And in this kind of case, normally we don't have such extremes with morbid obesity or a 90-year-old lady, but the day-to-day operation of, I caught an infection from somebody. Okay. Modern medicine does focus on washing your hands, protecting, don't spread the germs. But in addition to that, we need to figure out what we're doing that led to the infection. Let's take diabetes, for example. A person with diabetes might have a blood sugar level over 200. Normally, it's less than 100. When it goes up to 180, 240, 300, 400, the sugar is pouring out. It comes in the sweat. It's on the skin. It's perfect for germs to eat. That's why diabetics get infections so often. Now, we can't, if we go through a bad experience and know what it's causes it, and then try to prevent it, then there's a cooperation that is a challenge. Or is it worth getting rid of your favorite junk food? Is it worth eating more salad? But you have to chop it. Oh, it's expensive. That's it. Is it worth it? Many people really want to eat properly, but they don't have time. oh, they are so busy, and so they stopped and got some pizza on the way home to save time. No, in order to have the proper diet that we're talking about, like a cold food plant-based diet, it takes effort. And when you aim for your ideal metabolism and ideal weight, the best you can be, not perfect, but even if you improve it a little bit, you have a better chance of not having the slime, the garbage, the sugar, the starch, all those extra things cluttering the body and making your body overweight that become food for germs. On the um, on the basis of that, I can give general principles, but it has to be individualized. Um, so that's kind of the presentation on bacterial infections. Bacteria are part of nature. They are invited when there's food to break down, there's waste built up. They are decomposers, and their life depends upon being fed, just like the birds, just like the worms, just like the roaches. And we need to understand our relationship with nature. Just like in forest fires, if you want to prevent forest fires, you have to trim the underbrush. You have to clear out the dead wood so that it's not a Kindle box. Okay. That concludes our discussion for today. That's number 20, I believe. Next time, we're going to talk about genetic diseases.